In this episode, we're going to talk about how to jumpstart your career, whether you're trying to grow in your current career path or if you're trying to change your career. And we're going to get a little real and a little raw. So let's put the BS and the excuses aside and let's hit the theme music. Welcome back to Rebase. I am your host, Sean P. Martin, and this is the show that is all about profession with purpose. You know, I primarily spend my time in my current business working on the employer side of things with executives, with hiring managers, with recruiters, HR professionals, helping them to resolve their recruiting problems, the hitch in their giddy up, the kinks in their system, if you will, so that they can attract and hire the absolute best talent and the best fit for what they actually need. Now, that said, I do spend a lot of outside time guiding and mentoring all types of people who are trying to grow in their career. It's an area I'm just passionate about and an area where I really like to help people realize a change and, meet their goals and realize their dreams, really. And whether that means they're trying to grow in their current career path, maybe take the next step, maybe make a huge leap, maybe just get a promotion or get a raise, or if they're trying to change careers. The way things go in the modern economy nowadays, people don't tend to stick with a single career path their entire career. It's not like it was maybe a generation or two ago where people will start to work for one company and they'll work for that same company for 20, 30, 40 years until they collect a pension. And there's a lot of things that go into that and a lot of reasons why that is the case. But the fact of the matter is that people these days don't typically stick with one company, and that means that there's a lot of variation when they're jumping from company to company. Even if they only work for 2 or 3 different organizations in their entire career, there's a lot of variance in what it is that they're doing. And sometimes you have to pick up some new skills that maybe you didn't expect to pick up. Sometimes you learn about a new profession or a new discipline and it interests you more than the path you're currently on, so you want to change careers. And inevitably, when I talk with people who are trying to grow in their career path or they're trying to change professions, change disciplines, change careers, if you will, inevitably I'm talking with them because they've hit some sort of sticking point, because they have some sort of problems that they can't really seem to overcome on their own, and they are seeking out help. And that is not a bad thing at all, by the way, seeking out help. Everybody should not think that they should have to do everything like this on their own. And it's often super valuable to have an outside, more objective perspective, because honestly, we're too close to everything when it comes to ourselves and our careers and what the possibilities even are. So, but inevitably, when people come to me and they're telling me what it is that they want, and they're telling me what's stopping them from getting what it is that they want, I usually hear some version of the same things. And it's usually something along the lines of, my current job sucks, my current boss sucks, my employer sucks, and they don't invest in my growth, or I want to grow, or I don't know where to get started, and I don't know what to do, and nobody will give me a chance, and I don't have experience, but I need experience to get experience, and I can't get experience because nobody will hire me without experience. And that's not to say that these things are necessarily untrue. You could have a terrible boss, terrible manager. You could have an employer. You could be working for a company that doesn't invest anything in your growth. And I get it. It can be really challenging and really confusing to know where to get started these days, especially if you're trying to change careers. Usually, if you're trying to grow in your career, you've got a handful of options. You can try to go in a particular trajectory, and if it's not working out at that company, you can seek to go in that trajectory elsewhere. You could try to go in a slightly different trajectory at your current company. There are a few options, and probably a few less options when you're just trying to grow in your current career path, but there still are options. And I understand that regardless of whether you're just trying to grow and maybe, like I said, get that next promotion, that next raise, that next pay bump, that recognition, even, or if you're trying to make a shift, a drastic shift, or a more minor shift, that you can have a lot of challenges. And the purpose of this episode, which is going to be a little bit different from the last few episodes, the purpose of this episode is not going to be quite as tactical. It's still going to be tactical because that's just how my engineering brain operates, but it'll probably be a little bit more unstructured than what you might be used to. And honestly, it may sound a little bit ranty at times, like I'm just going off on a tangent or on a long rant, but I promise anytime it seems like I'm going off on a frustrated kind of rant, it's all coming from a caring and loving place. End of the day, I only want you. That's you listening to this. And that's, everyone. I want everyone to be able to craft the career of your dreams. I want you to be able to build something that brings you not just success, but also massive fulfillment and, of course, purpose. And I believe that is possible for everybody. And I believe that sometimes the biggest challenge is just getting out of our own damn way. So in this episode, I'm going to just give you a few notes. I've got a very light outline here in front of me. And as I'm sitting here, half baking in the Austin sun, sitting in my lovely car right now, currently supercharging so that I can get back here on the road, I just want to go over some of the notes that I have to help you jumpstart that growth or that change that you really need in your career, because at the end of the day, nobody can do this but you. And I do want to start out and just lay the groundwork in this episode with just a handful of what I believe are foundational principles that go along with seeking this kind of growth and making it happen, or enacting this kind of career trajectory change, so to speak. And so we'll go over these foundational principles just really quick. And, you may honestly feel free to disagree with these principles, but this is what I have found through my observations and my experiences over the past 20 plus years. And I've been around enough people from enough different walks of life and enough different geographic areas that these seem to ring fairly true. And the first principle is that, change in general, especially as it comes to your career, isn't easy. Change in life is not as easy as we'd like to make it out to be. Everybody says that they want to grow. Everybody says they want to get better. And yet, at the same time, most people are afraid of changing, and they're afraid of what that means. And when you get better, you get that promotion. That means that, you've gotten better and you've changed, but now you have more responsibilities. You have different responsibilities than you had before. Maybe you still have your old responsibilities, and now you've got a bunch of new crap on top of that. When you change careers, things pop up that you didn't know were a part of working in this kind of career. And there may be things that you don't really care for, but you didn't know that they were going to be there. And you have to either learn to love them or deal with them some other way. And like I said, everybody claims they want to grow, but a lot of times we don't necessarily want to put in the hard work, or we don't want to admit to ourselves the sacrifice that it may take in order for that growth. One of my favorite examples of this, and it's a bit over the top, but there's a world famous world champion bodybuilder named Ronnie Coleman, who has a quote that I love. And he said, "And everybody want to look like a bodybuilder, but nobody wants to lift heavy ass weights." And like I said, that's an extreme example. And Ronnie Coleman is a massive human being. And obviously not everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but I really appreciate his point that, people want the results, but a lot of times they're not willing to think about the hard work and the sacrifice. So change isn't easy. That's really number one. And that leads into the next foundational principle that goes along with any lasting change. And that's that we need to be able to develop persistence and resilience if we want to have any significant growth and any significant and lasting change in our career and in our life. And along with that persistence and resilience, you need to understand that not everybody is going to be on your side throughout this journey. Not everybody is growth minded. Not everybody wants to make a significant change. A lot of people are perfectly happy with the way everything in their life is, and that includes their perception of you. And that means that some people are maybe going to passive aggressively or aggressively resist your desire and your efforts to grow and to change. I give you a great example. If you're the type of person you've ever gone through like a serious transformation with your body, you've ever lost a bunch of weight, you've ever gotten in shape, put on some muscle, changed your eating habits, your diet, your lifestyle, even if it's not a drastic change in that lifestyle, inevitably you're going to run into some people who don't care for this new you. And it has nothing to do with you usually. It's usually because of how it reflects upon them. But they're not on your side as you're losing that weight, as you're putting on that muscle. I'll never forget, back in around 2010, I had put on whatever the post-college version of the freshman 15 is, but it was about 30 pounds of weight that I'd put on over about 4 or 5 years out of college. And I wasn't working out regularly. I hadn't adjusted to the professional schedule. I didn't have a regular routine like I used to have in college where I was actually active on a regular basis. And so I had put on around 30 pounds and was, over 200 pounds or so, and not in a healthy, sexy way. And through a bunch of research and through just kind of figuring out what I enjoyed doing actively and what would work for me and my body as far as nutrition goes, I managed to cut that 30 pounds and lose that weight in about 3.5 months. And honestly, I was in the best shape that up to that point I'd probably ever been in, like a lean 175 pounds and, relatively muscular. And I just lost a lot of that, sort of fat from around my face and around my belly that I'd put on over the years. And I'll never forget, there was a loving, caring coworker of mine at the time who kept talking about how unhealthy I looked. And she happened to be a rather large woman. And like I said, very caring, very motherly. And I knew she meant the best, but she wasn't happy. She didn't see healthy and how I had lost this weight that I needed to lose. She didn't see that as healthy. And this was somebody who had severe health problems related to being overweight. And just, it had nothing really to do with me. And you just have to understand that sometimes when you make a change like that for the better, not everyone's going to be on your side. The next thing that we need to understand is this foundational principle is that patience is of the utmost. It's not just that persistence and that resilience. We can persist in the short term, we can be resilient in the short term, but we need to be patient and understand that this is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to get that promotion by checking a couple boxes in the next few weeks. You're not going to jump from one career into the next just by taking a class over the weekend. And you just need to have patience and understand that not only is it going to take a little while, but also you're not necessarily going to know all the steps along the path that you need to take to get there. You're not going to know all those right now. And you don't need to know them right now. You just need to know what the next 2 steps are and just focus on those. And once you get to that next step, then you'll know what to do next. And then you'll know what to do after that. And if you don't, you stop and you ask then. But thinking that you can have this all planned out is a little optimistic, overly optimistic, and it's a little foolish. So have patience. This is a tough one for me, and I get it. And I oftentimes wish that things would just happen overnight, but they simply do not, especially when it comes to building the skills you need to excel in your career. And lastly, none of this is going to happen. None of your career growth, none of your changing careers is going to happen just by getting some new degree or some new certification and getting some certification, going to school, whether that is an accredited university or that is, online classes or some sort of boot camp or something like that. Just taking the courses and passing the test does not make you a qualified professional in a new industry. It does not make you qualified at that next level. All it means is that you are able to complete that degree, that certification, that class. It's only one piece. Understanding things in the theoretical is only one piece of growing in your career or in changing careers. And I think what you'll find is that if you actually get awarded that new position after taking some sort of course or certification right away, what you find is that you're completely out of your depth going in when you start to put things into practice. And I'm not dogging on formal education. I believe that it absolutely can help. But in my experience, pretty much no matter what the profession, nothing trumps real world experience. So just by knowing the theory, just by knowing the facts, it doesn't mean that you're actually going to be ready for that new career. And you have to understand that whether you get the new opportunity right away or not. Okay, now that we got those foundational principles out of the way, I want to switch gears just slightly, go back to what I was talking about earlier, where the common complaints that I hear from people, generally speaking, are, my job sucks, my boss sucks, my employer doesn't invest in my growth, I don't know where to get started, nobody gives me a chance, I can't get any experience. And I want to ask you a question. Is your career your responsibility, or is it someone else's responsibility? And hopefully that's a little rhetorical and you're not actually sitting there, weighing the options and thinking, well, honestly, it's a little bit of both. No. Your career, your ability to find fulfillment in what it is you do, your ability to find purpose in what it is that you do, and to succeed beyond your wildest dreams is not up to anybody else. Sure, you're going to get some help along the way. Sure, you might catch a break or two. You might have a few breaks that you don't catch. But inevitably, how you perform in your career, you can't pass the blame along to anybody else. If you're trying something and it's not working, you have to figure out when it's time to try something else. If you're trying to progress in your career and you get passed over time and time and time again at the same organization, you could stay with that organization and then complain about how you never got the opportunity, or you can make something happen elsewhere. But end of the day, I would challenge you to stop making excuses. Stop waiting for somebody else to push you along or to give you, the helping hand that you need, and start working on these things on your own. And once you start working on these things and you start really making progress, people are going to notice. And they're going to be more willing to help you out because they're going to see the progress you made. The people that you want involved in your career and in helping it along are going to be the ones that notice the hard work that you're doing, not the ones that hear you complaining about how you're not catching any breaks. If you want to complain that your current employer doesn't treat you well and isn't contributing to your growth, sure, go ahead and complain, but do it in private to people that you really trust to keep that confident, or complain to people you don't know anonymously, online. Understand that no matter where you're at right now, no matter where you're at in your career, you can choose to start and take your next steps from one of two places. The first place you can start from is your ideals, or what you believe, what should be happening, how things should be in your life and in your career, what people should be giving to you, what opportunities you should have. Or you can start from the place of what's real. And you can acknowledge, really, are people giving you any opportunities? Are there opportunities that you're missing? If you're not going to have opportunities, what does that mean and what steps should you take? There are far too many resources available to you to place the blame on other people. And there are far too many resources available to you to let anything stop you. I was really fortunate, and I'm appreciative and grateful to this day that I was fortunate enough that when I was growing up in rural Pennsylvania and grew up kind of far away, far enough drive from most of my friends that, I spent a lot of time around the house and, outside being active and playing sports and things like that, but also, just a lot of time, hanging around the house. My parents are both busy and, they didn't want to drive me everywhere and just to go hang out with friends and potentially get myself into trouble. And I was fortunate that from a fairly early age, I took an interest in computers and in computer programming, web page design, and JavaScript and all these other things. And I was fortunate that, at the time, my dad had a job working with computers, completely unrelated to what it was I wanted to do, but we had computers around the house. We had a phone line that was dedicated to internet, which was pretty cool. For those of you who don't know, back in the day, you used to have a phone line and you had to use the phone line to dial up to the internet. And if somebody picked up the phone, well, you just screwed everything up. But because I had access to these things and because my parents saw this desire and this drive in me, we would go to like the discount store and we would pick up, some, one or two edition out of print books on HTML or on JavaScript or on C++ and whatever it was I was into at the time. And because of those books and because of having access to the computers and the technology and things like that, I was fortunate that I got to basically try out this sort of hobby that would turn into a profession at a very early age. And like I said, I'm eternally grateful for having access to those resources and for having parents who would actually invest that, $4.99 in that thick phone book sized, teach yourself C++ in 21 days, manual. But I didn't have any of the things available to me that people have available today. Back when I was 12 years old, we're talking 1994. I mean, the internet was barely a blip. It was barely an idea. There wasn't Udemy. There wasn't LinkedIn Learning. There wasn't Skillshare. There weren't online-based meetups. There wasn't Reddit. There wasn't Facebook. There wasn't Khan Academy. There weren't all of these resources available at the tip of your fingers where for free, a lot of times, there wasn't YouTube. God, you can learn practically anything for free on YouTube if you just look hard enough. I didn't have any of that available to me today, and it's all available if you want to get started in growing a particular skill or in changing your career path. And you can dabble a little bit and see if it's right for you, if it's what you're interested in. You can find basically any information you absolutely want. And so to say that others won't invest in you, if you're not investing the time in yourself, then do you really want to grow and earn that next step in your career? Or are you expecting it to be handed to you? And so that's why I'm saying stop making excuses. Get started. Look for resources. You don't have to look very far. The next thing you have to do is you have to figure out a clear enough goal. I say clear enough because it doesn't have to be a super sharp goal. It can just be something that you're moving towards. Maybe call it, your North Star. Like, where's the direction you want to go? Where do you want your career to go? What is a goal? And determine, is this a short-term goal, a medium-term goal, or a long-term goal? And what short, medium, and long, could differ depending on who you are. You might set a goal for 2 years from now as your long-term goal. You may have a 10-year goal as your long-term goal. But just figure it out and figure out for you, is that short, medium, or long-term? And then when you figure out what type of goal it is, what term, then figure out what's a reasonable amount of time to get to that goal. And why do you think that is a reasonable amount of time to get there? Have you vetted that goal and that timeline, maybe with somebody who's gone through a similar experience or somebody who's in that particular industry or somebody's achieved what you want to achieve? To say that you want to start a business and make $1 million in 6 months could be a reasonable goal in 6 months. But if you talk to people who worked in that industry, who've built businesses and found out if you're being reasonable, if you're being, quirky, unreasonable, if you're being just ridiculously unreasonable. And so figure out some goal and make it a little time-based and figure out about how long you're giving yourself to try to get there. And then when you vet that with goals, if you vet that goal, with others in that field or with similar experiences, you can determine, is that direction or is that goal achievable? Next, when you set that goal, ask yourself, is that goal or that direction that you're setting, is it motivating to you or is it inspiring to you? Or is it just something that you're kind of like, I feel like that makes sense and I should move towards that goal because that's just the way to go. Because if it's not inspiring to you, if it's not motivating to you in some way, if there's no real drive or purpose behind achieving that goal, I can almost guarantee that at the first sign of trouble or at the first distraction, you're going to give up on it. And you want this to be a goal that you can hit and you can achieve. You don't want it to be too easy, but you also don't want it to be something where at the first sign of trouble, you're just going to abandon ship. And it doesn't have to be an aggressive goal to be motivating or to drive you. But just maybe picture yourself achieving this goal. Use the models you have, use the people you've seen doing similar things. Picture yourself achieving that goal. How does that picture you? How do you feel? Think about it. You're 6 months out from now and you've achieved this goal that you set for yourself 6 months ago. And figure out, how do you feel? Picture it. Move yourself forward in time. How do you feel? I mean, you've had to overcome a lot to get to that point in the last 6 months. Why, now that you've achieved that goal, why has it been worth the trials, the tribulations, the struggles, the frustrations, the obstacles you've overcome, the sacrifices you've made, the people who have been trying to hold you back, the people who weren't on board and might have been sabotaging you, again, passive aggressively or aggressively? And why has it been worth that? When you achieve that goal now, like, who have you become by achieving that goal? Who else maybe has been positively impacted by this growth in you, this transformation that you've made? Who else has come along for the ride? How have their lives been impacted? And if you can answer those questions and that goal can inspire or motivate you, then you know you've got a pretty good goal in your hands. And if it's not inspiring or motivating and you're not really feeling it, then you might want to go back to the drawing board and just come up with something a little bit better. But use that exercise and picture yourself achieving that and determine how that feels. The next thing to do in this is critical. It goes back to what I said about not doing things yourself and how I love mentoring and helping to guide people along the path. Even though they can only do the work themselves, I still like being there for them. But this next thing, you have to find a mentor or you have to find somebody to model. And these people don't have to be people who are right next to you and close to you. You could find mentorship. You could find somebody to model online. You could find them in a book. You know, you could use somebody historically to model or to be a thought leader or a mentor for you. So think about it. Who's someone in this position now, the position you want to be in, or who has already been in this place where you want to be? Maybe they're not there now. Maybe they've exceeded it. Maybe they've changed gears and they're somewhere else. But who is someone who has been in or is now in sort of the position that you want to be in? Do they maybe have a similar path as you? I mean, why try to carve your own distinct path and make it all up as you go along and make every single mistake that somebody else has already made? As the saying goes, success leaves clues. So if you can find somebody to model or somebody to act as a mentor for you, you can start to pick up on those clues that can lead to your own success in a lot shorter time and with a lot less heartache and headache. And that mentor, that model, will help you to discover the things that are critical for you to learn, grow, and develop, and the things that maybe you can forget about right now. God, I can't tell you how many times somebody has come to me and asked me if they should take this class or this course or this thing that is completely inconsequential to the growth of their career. But they look to take those things because somebody gave them a recommendation that was bad, or maybe because it was going to be easy and they didn't necessarily want to challenge themselves because they're a little bit afraid and maybe they just need a little bit of push in a more challenging direction. And it happens all the time. So you need to discover those things that are going to be critical to your growth and to your success, and the things that you can delay, put off, or just ignore completely. And then with the help of that mentor or that model, especially if it's somebody that you have direct access to, come up with a laundry list of possible activities that you could work on to move towards that goal. I'm here to tell you that there's always more than one way to get to a goal. Think of it like you're setting a destination on a map. There are going to be short ways, long ways, scenic ways, back roads. There's going to be all kinds of different ways to get to one destination. There's always dozens, hundreds, probably thousands of possible ways to get there. You know, I was talking with somebody recently who was working sort of a clerk's job, an office job, and wanted to get into software development and had their mind made up that they have to quit their job in order to have the time to take the classes for programming, in order to, learn the skills that they needed, in order to find the job that would be like their great next job and start off their, software engineering career. And they literally said this to me. They said that, I don't have the time or the energy after work. On one hand, they're saying my job is super boring and super unfulfilling. And then at the same time, they're saying, but when I leave the job, I'm so tired. I don't have the energy or the time to invest in doing this stuff after work. So I've got money saved up. I have to quit. And that's the only way to do it. And I asked them, and I was probably a little mean because I asked them, is that really the only way for you to learn the skills you need for software engineering? Is that the only way for you to learn those skills to quit your job? Is there possibly another path you could take? Could you maybe learn this stuff on weekends? And they actually told me, nope, that's the only way. And I was a little mean to them. And I honestly called them out and I said, bullshit. There's always another way. I mean, you think about the only way that you have to achieve something. If you stop and think that every single person who's achieved the thing that you're looking to do or something similar to it, every single person has taken an infinitely variable path to get there. There is no one path. There is no one degree. There is no one school. There is no one course, and there is no one way. And what I think you find is that a lot of times when you stop obsessing about the single path that you have to take in order to get there and thinking you've got it all mapped out and you've got every answer and every step all planned out, what you end up finding when you stop focusing on that one rigid path is that multiple times along the way, things pop up that could potentially be better options. Opportunities pop up whenever you're not just so close-minded and so focused on the one inflexible way to get there. And I can give you a perfect example from my professional life. You know how I got my first job out of college? All I knew that I wanted was to get a software programming job. And I didn't know how I was going to get it, and I didn't know where to look. And honestly, I went to school in Tallahassee, Florida, where at the time especially, there wasn't a whole lot of private industry. There was a handful of universities, a lot of state government because it's the state capital, and not a lot else, especially where software engineering is concerned. This is 2004, so it was kind of after the first .com bust and before the more recent boom that we've had over the last 10 years or so. And so I applied for a handful of jobs. One of the jobs I applied for was to be a server administrator and a network administrator at a state government agency. And especially for you, those of you who aren't in tech, I may have to explain this a little bit, but let me just put it this way. I was not qualified by any stretch of the imagination to be a network administrator or a server administrator, but it was a tech job, and I figured, hey, maybe they'll train me, and maybe I can BS my way through the interview, honestly, and get in there, and maybe they won't fire me for a while, and I can learn on the job and do just well enough to kind of make it through. And what ended up happening was I definitely did not get that job. It was clear from the interviews that I wasn't fooling anybody, and that was not going to be the job for me. But what did happen was the hiring manager and the head of the department who interviewed me for that job had lunch a couple weeks later with the department head for another state agency there in Tallahassee. And during that lunch, the other department head says, man, I have to hire a programmer, and I just can't seem to find a good programmer anywhere. And this guy who had interviewed me, who had turned me down for this job, said, holy crap, I just interviewed a really sharp programmer for a network admin job that he wasn't qualified for that, but he seems like a really good programmer. You should talk to him. And it took a little bit of time, and some things had to get fleshed out to make sure that they had the funding for the role and everything like that. But inevitably, I ended up getting that job. And what's funny is about 18 months later, through that job, I got my next job. And the next job was one of the best jobs I ever had. I was there for 6 years. I grew a ton. I grew some leadership skills. I really shot up in my career. And I got that second job because the person who trained me for the first job also hired consultants and was filling a consulting role over at the second job and thought of me whenever she was trying to find a good programmer do you put in for the second job? So a lot of times the path you think you're going to take is not going to be the path that is going to actually bear the best fruit. Okay, so now you've got a goal and you've got a decent idea of where you want to go and about when you want to get there by. Have you set up some milestones or checkpoints along the path just to be able to gauge whether you're actually making progress or whether you're kind of slacking off and expecting everything to happen for you right at the end? So figure out, halfway along the way, a quarter of the way along the way, every few weeks, whatever works best for you, whatever frequency you need, add in a milestone or a checkpoint and just kind of determine, okay, about how far along should I be towards realizing this vision or achieving this goal? 2 weeks from now, a month from now, should I have taken a class? Should I have, enrolled in a second course because I'm finishing up the first one? Should I have done some work on spec for somebody? Have I don't know, gone on Upwork or somewhere like TaskRabbit or Fiverr, whatever it is for you? Figure out what a milestone or a checkpoint would be that would just prove that you've been making progress towards the goal. And then hold yourself to those milestones. Don't beat yourself up if you don't happen to hit one, but understand about how far along that milestone means you will be towards achieving your goal. And then along with having milestones and checkpoints and with having that mentor, make sure you get some accountability. And when I say accountability, I don't mean share your plans of what you're going to do with your career or your career change and sharing that with everybody on the planet via your social media accounts. All that's going to do is just going to give you some boost of endorphins or whatever because you're declaring to the world, look at me and look what I'm going to be doing. And I know that we do this a lot. Some of us are more guilty of it than others, but it's as if announcing the plan of where you're going to go means that you somehow accomplished something aside from typing that shit up and posting it on LinkedIn or on Facebook or something. Saying you're going to do something is nothing. All it is clarity in your mind for what it is you're going to do. So by announcing it to the world, you haven't taken the first step. You've actually probably taken a step back because you feel like you've gotten something done. So you're like, all right, I announced to the world that I'm going to change careers. Good for the day. Let's wrap it up and we'll start again tomorrow. No. Instead, share your desired goals and the rough plan of what you think you could do to get there with someone who will actually hold you accountable to doing the work and hitting your declared milestones. If you can afford to, hire a coach. Hire someone who is completely unbiased, who doesn't have a vested interest in your success or in your failure, who isn't your boss or a coworker who could potentially start looking at your progress and get threatened by it or try to guide you in a different direction for any reason. Get somebody who is unbiased and who doesn't have a conflict of interest. And this is kind of why I suggest getting a coach if you can afford to, because the problem with having an accountability partner, so to speak, who is part of your friends or your family, is that they could very well become threatened or concerned by your growth. Again, not because of you, but because of how it reflects on them. And you want to have an investment in somebody who is really, their only investment is in helping you and helping you to ensure your own success and helping to steer you back on the path whenever you get off the path, or helping you to see more options whenever you don't see the options that you might have. So find somebody who's as unbiased as possible, who doesn't have a conflict of interest, and whose really only investment is in helping to ensure your success. And the last thing here, the most important thing that I really, really want to stress. Don't overthink this. Don't overplan this. Just get started already. Do you know who opportunities usually don't come to? People standing still. People who are stuck in their own head, trying to think of the perfect idea. People who isolate themselves off from the world or from the industry that they want to move into or the industry they want to grow in. People who are stuck planning, not moving. I mean, you can debate which coding boot camp you want to go to, or which yoga teacher certification course you want to take, or which online MBA program is going to be the best for your particular desired goal, or which photography course you want to take online, or you could just pick one and get started. I mean, the nice happy medium in between there is that you could just ask a few people who you respect, maybe a few people who've achieved these goals again, and ask them what they would recommend. Tell them clearly as you can what your desired goal is. Don't just say, I want to become a programmer, or I want to become a yoga teacher, or I want to get my next promotion in my job. Explain to them why. Explain what the goal is, why it's important to you, and then get a few recommendations. And from those recommendations, pick one and get started. I would say the least fulfilled I would say the least fulfilled people, and the ones who don't achieve their dreams, the ones who don't experience this growth, the ones who don't realize this change, are the ones who get started on a million things and they never finish one. They start one course online and they realize that they don't really care for it, so they start another. And then they start another. And then they decide they want to pick a different goal or a different platform, so they start another. And they never really tie up the loose ends on any of these things, but they seem like they're really busy. They're taking all these classes. Well, yeah, they're signing up for them all. So pick something and get started. And as you're going, apply what you're learning however you're able to apply it. The saying that knowledge is power is kind of horseshit. We have the internet. We have access to all the information in the world. Knowledge isn't power. Knowledge applied and put into action is power. Because when you apply knowledge, when you apply your learnings, you start to learn lessons from applying things, doing things. And that stuff you learn, the lessons, the good or bad, the things you learn from the mistakes, the things you learn from the successes, those eventually become what we like to call wisdom. I'd much rather have wisdom from experience than so-called knowledge. So pick something, pick some path, knowing that it's not going to be a perfect path, and get started. One of my favorite sayings I first heard in the strength and conditioning industry was that even an imperfect plan, perfectly executed, will get results, versus a perfect plan, imperfectly executed. And I think General Patton said something similar to the effect of an imperfect plan violently executed today beats a perfect plan executed next week. Something like that. But getting started, having some direction, you don't just have to fly blindly, but having some direction is getting started is way better than getting stuck in analysis paralysis. And coming from a nearly lifelong perfectionist, something I battled with a lot and really had to do some heavy internal work to get rid of. I understand analysis paralysis, but it's never going to be perfect your first time out. You're going to make mistakes. Accept that and deal with it. So some quick parting thoughts, if you will. Again, understand that things don't have to be perfect, and understand that things aren't going to go as planned. Your career path is unlikely to be some straight path where you feel like right now you know all the steps on that path. And it's probably not even going to be a long and winding road, honestly. It's more likely to be zigzagged with a bunch of speed bumps and roadblocks and detours. But that's okay. Stay on the path. Remember that North Star. Remember your goal. And just keep moving. And again, that destination that you initially imagined will likely change as well. And this isn't a bad thing. If you get a sense of your North Star, where you ultimately want to go, and more importantly, why that's important to you, then you can shift the specific picture of what that destination is. I mean, honestly, I never thought I would have enjoyed leading a team of product and engineering professionals back when I started writing code. Even up till a couple of years before I got into an executive role, I never would have thought I would have enjoyed it or that I would have been any good at it. Turns out I was, pretty good at it, and I really enjoyed it. Next parting thought, stick with it. It's going to get hard. You're going to get stuck. You're going to be bad at things when you start out. Half the fun is going from bad to not so bad and getting unstuck. And trust me, other people will want to help you with this. Last parting thought, take a bunch of shots, knowing you're probably going to miss a lot of shots. I mean, you never know what could happen. But if you take those shots knowing that you're taking it for fun and, maybe something will happen, probably nothing won't. You never know what could result. Again, if I hadn't applied for a job that I was definitely not qualified for, if I hadn't gotten that interview, thanks to my buddy and eventual roommate who got me the interview, I never would have gotten my first job out of school. And I never would have gotten that second job that I love so much that prepared me for so much more in my career. And taking a bunch of shots and kind of knowing that you're going to miss a lot of those shots helps to start building that resilience that is so important going forward. And plus, eventually, at first maybe you take those shots and you get really bummed out whenever you miss, but eventually you start to become kind of disconnected emotionally from that result and that outcome, but in like a really good way, because you're just taking the shots because it's fun to try new things and it's fun to apply for jobs and it's fun to learn a new skill. And it doesn't always have to lead to some result that you want. So that's that. I hope that this is helpful for you. And if you're trying to spur some career growth, I hope you got something out of this and that you will apply one or maybe two things out of this episode. I know we're all in different places in our careers, but I wanted this episode to really just be kind of a wake-up call, no matter where it is you want to go or what it is you want to be doing, that it's a wake-up call for you to take control of your own destiny and not wait for somebody else to give you permission to be great in what it is you want to do. And I know that this was a little bit of a different style or a different format than some other episodes, but if you enjoyed it, or if you have thoughts one way or the other, I'd really love to hear them. So hit me up on social media, on Twitter or Instagram specifically, at either Sean P. Martin, Shaun, P as in Paul, Martin, Sean P. Martin, or at Rebase HQ. That's Rebase, Rebase HQ. And hit me up. Those are my two handles on Twitter and Instagram. Some of them vary in a few other platforms, so let's stick to those. But hit me up. Let me know what you thought about this episode, about this format, and what you might have changed up, or if you want to hear more sorts of episodes and topics like this one. I know that I loved recording this episode because I'm so passionate about helping other people take ownership of their own destiny and of their own future. So hit me up on social media, shoot me a DM or an @ mention or whatever, and let me know what you thought. And until next week, this is Sean signing off. Hey, what's up? It's Sean again. I hope you enjoyed this episode today. Whether you learned something, you were amused, entertained, maybe outraged a little bit, I hope that you had an enjoyable time. And if you did enjoy this episode, I advise you to subscribe in your podcast app, whether that is Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Spotify or Stitcher or some other platform I've never heard of. There are a million of them out there. So if you go ahead and subscribe, you will make sure that you will get every single episode as we release it. And you can go back and look at our back catalog of archived episodes on anything from the future of work to freelancing and going into the business of you, to how you can deal with being overwhelmed in your professional life. If you enjoyed the podcast and you want to help out, make sure you go to Apple Podcasts or, again, whatever your platform is, and leave us a review. Highly reviewed podcasts reach more people. They're the lifeblood. These reviews are the lifeblood of any podcast, and we want to make sure that we impact as many people as we possibly can and hopefully provide them the same level of value that we provided you in this episode and every episode moving forward. So please go, leave us a review, and you might even get featured on a future episode. So until next time, I'm Sean P. Martin. Thank you so much for listening. Cheers.